A lot more stores closing right now than there are stores opening, and this is according to data from Coresight Research.
The store you walked into last month might not be there next month. Not because the location moved, because the company ran out of road. Right now, while you are reading sale signs and collecting loyalty points, some of the most familiar names in American retail are filing paperwork that most of their own customers have no idea exists. 10 clothing chains heading toward the exit faster than anyone predicted. 3 doing something so completely different that they are not just surviving, they are growing. The list starts right now. Number 13. Cato Fashions. Cato built its name on affordable everyday basics for value-focused shoppers across small towns in the South and Midwest, the kind of stores that anchored strip malls rather than glossy indoor malls. The chain has been closing hundreds of underperforming locations as leases expire, concentrating what remains around its stronger regional clusters. Marlene, a store associate who spent 9 years behind the register at her local Cato, said the writing was on the wall long before the official notice, since new inventory shipments had already slowed to a trickle. She said regular customers kept asking why the racks looked thinner every month, and staff were told to simply say, corporate was streamlining. That vague language rarely reassures anyone, and Marlene said most of her coworkers started job hunting the moment shipments slowed rather than waiting for a formal announcement. Several of them ended up taking part-time work at a dollar store down the road just to keep some income coming in while they looked for something steadier. Analysts point to a familiar issue. Small format value retailers depend on steady foot traffic in towns that are themselves losing population and shopping options, which leaves almost no cushion when costs rise. A store built around low prices has very little room to absorb higher rent and freight costs without either raising prices or shrinking its footprint. And Cato chose to shrink rather than risk alienating the budget-conscious shoppers it had spent decades courting. Marlene said her town's Cato was one of the only places within driving distance to buy affordable work clothes in person, so its closure means a genuine gap, not just an inconvenience. For shoppers in smaller towns without a nearby mall, losing a chain like Cato often means losing in-person clothes shopping altogether, not just switching to a competitor down the street. Marlene said she has already started warning regulars that the closing sale is coming, so at least they can plan their next work clothes trip before the doors shut for good. Number 12 keeps the countdown moving through a name that has already survived one shutdown and is now facing another. Number 12. Rue 21. Rue 21 spent years dressing teenagers on tight budgets with trend-driven basics at mall prices even forever. 21 shoppers considered cheap. The chain has cycled through bankruptcy more than once, each time emerging smaller, and its latest round of closures is trimming the footprint further as leases come up for renewal. Destiny, a former shift lead who worked there through high school and college, said the store's biggest problem was never the clothes themselves, but keeping enough staff on the floor once corporate cut hours to the bone. She said customers would wait 15 minutes just to try something on, because there was only ever one person working the fitting rooms. That kind of understaffing quietly pushes loyal shoppers toward competitors long before a closure sign ever goes up, since a frustrating trip in person is easy to avoid by simply ordering online instead. Destiny said she watched her own paycheck shrink as scheduled hours were slashed season after season until picking up a second job elsewhere became the only realistic option just to cover her own bills. She also said corporate kept promising a turnaround was coming, new store layouts, refreshed branding, a stronger online push, but the promised changes rarely showed up at her actual location before the closure notice did. Industry watchers see Rue 21 as a case study in how many closure cycles a mall brand can survive before shoppers simply stop giving it a second chance, since each bankruptcy erodes a little more of the trust that keeps people walking back through the door. Hit the subscribe button so you catch every closure list before your local stores disappear too. Next on the list carries the list to a surf and skate mainstay, that grew up alongside an entire generation of mall shoppers. Number 11. Tilly's. Tilly's built a loyal following selling skate, surf, and streetwear brands to teenagers who wanted something a little edgier than the standard mall lineup. The company has confirmed a fresh wave of store closures as part of a broader effort to cut costs after several straight quarters of falling sales. Owen, a longtime shopper who bought his first skateboard shoes there in middle school, said the closures felt inevitable once the brand mix in-store started overlapping so heavily with what he could find cheaper online. He said the store used to feel like a curated shop with its own identity. But in recent years, the selection started to blur together with every other mall retailer chasing the same trends. That loss of a distinct identity is often the quiet warning sign before a closure headline, since shoppers stop feeling like a store offers anything they cannot get elsewhere. Owen said he still checks in occasionally out of nostalgia, but admits he now does most of his actual shopping through the brand's own websites directly, ordering the exact same shoes and jackets he used to buy in person without ever setting foot in the mall. Company leadership has pointed to a broader slowdown in mall traffic among teenagers, who increasingly discover new brands through social media rather than by wandering a physical storefront, a shift that hits identity-driven retailers like Tilly's especially hard. Before we get to number 4, if breakdowns like this help you understand what is actually happening at the mall, the next number takes the closures from a mall staple to a household name that most shoppers assumed was untouchable. Number 10. Francesca's. This one hit shoppers hard because the closures were not gradual. Francesca's filed for bankruptcy protection in early 2026 and announced it would shut down all of its roughly 400 stores across the country. Denise, a retail manager who worked at a Francesca's location for 6 years, said the corporate gave her store barely a month of notice before the going out of business signs went up. That kind of short runway left longtime employees scrambling for new jobs during an already difficult retail season, with several coworkers applying to chains that were themselves in the middle of layoffs, which made the job hunt far more competitive than it would have been in a stronger retail year. The chain had actually filed for bankruptcy once before, back in 2020, and was rescued through a buyout at the time. This second filing did not end the same way. Shoppers who visited during the liquidation sales say early markdowns were smaller than expected, sometimes only 10 or 15% off, before deeper discounts appeared closer to the final weeks. That is a pattern worth knowing if you ever walk into a going out of business sale expecting instant bargains, because the steepest discounts almost always come near the very end, not the beginning. Industry analysts pointed to a familiar combination behind the collapse: rising mall lease costs, inconsistent merchandise that struggled to build repeat loyalty, and a shopper base that increasingly drifted toward newer, online-first brands. Number 9 moves the countdown to a name almost every American shopper recognizes on sight. Number 9. Forever 21. Forever 21 spent years as the go-to destination for cheap, trend-chasing fashion, and its sudden collapse still surprises people who grew up shopping there. The company filed for bankruptcy for a second time and shut down its remaining stores across the United States. Jasmine, a college student who worked seasonal retail there during high school, said the closure felt personal because it was where she bought her first job interview outfit. Fast fashion built forever, 21's entire business model, but that same model became its downfall once shoppers shifted toward online resale apps and ultra-cheap overseas retailers that could move even faster with lower overhead. She also mentioned that the store's return policy grew stricter in its final years, which she suspects was a quiet attempt to slow losses that shoppers noticed and resented long before the bankruptcy filing became public. Loyalty program members reported losing accumulated points entirely once the closures were finalized, a common but painful side effect shoppers rarely think about until it happens to their own account. If a chain built its entire identity around being cheap and constantly new, and a newer, cheaper competitor shows up online, that original chain has almost nothing left to compete on besides nostalgia. Jasmine said the store's clearance racks used to be the highlight of any mall trip with friends, but by the time the closures were announced, those same racks felt permanently picked over and disorganized. Number 8 takes the list to a familiar checkout line that quietly started disappearing this year. Number 8. Saks Off. Fifth Sex. Off Fifth built its identity on discounted designer brands, appealing to shoppers who wanted a taste of luxury without the luxury price tag. After parent company Saks Global filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, the off-price chain announced plans to close 57 store locations in early 2026. Harold, a longtime shopper who drove 40 minutes to his nearest location every season, said he found some of his best work suits there for a fraction of department store prices. He estimated he had spent close to $2,000 there over the past 3 years alone, all while paying roughly half of what the same labels cost at full-price retailers nearby. He said he has since started checking online outlet sections more often, but admits the experience of physically trying on a designer suit before buying is something no product photo has ever fully replaced for him. Does losing your favorite discount spot change where you shop entirely, or do you just find a new store to chase the same deals at? Retail analysts point to a familiar culprit behind this closure wave: rising real estate costs combined with shoppers increasingly comparison shopping online before ever stepping into a store, since an app can now show a lower price before a customer even parks the car. Harold said the hardest part was not losing the discounts themselves, but losing the specific mix of designer brands the store consistently carried that nothing else in his area replicated. The next on the list brings the countdown to a children's clothing staple many parents did not expect to see on this list. Number 7. Carter's has dressed generations of babies and toddlers, and its brand recognition made this closure wave feel unexpected to a lot of parents. The company confirmed plans to shutter about 150 low-margin stores over the next 3 years, with roughly 100 of those closures landing in 2026 alone. Priscilla, a mother of 3 who relied on Carter's for affordable school clothes every fall, said her nearest location closed with almost no warning posted in store. She now drives to a location nearly an hour away, or orders online, which she says costs her more once shipping fees are factored in, especially since sizing 3 growing kids online has led to far more returns than trying items on in person. Because children outgrow clothing so quickly, parents are especially price sensitive, and that sensitivity makes brick-and-mortar children's retailers some of the hardest stores to keep profitable in a mall setting. Carter's leadership has said the company is concentrating resources on its strongest locations while investing more heavily in its online store. The same playbook nearly every chain on this list is following in some form. Priscilla said losing the store's clearance events pushed her toward buying secondhand children's clothing. Instead, a shift retail analysts say is becoming increasingly common among budget-conscious parents nationwide, and one that costs a struggling retailer repeat business it can rarely afford to lose. The next number shifts the countdown toward a department store name that has been shrinking for years, but still surprised shoppers with its latest round. Number 6. Macy's has been trimming its footprint for years under a restructuring plan the company calls its bold new chapter. The retailer confirmed it will close 14 locations across 11 states in 2026, following 66 closures the year before. Once this latest round finishes, the company will have closed well over 100 locations since the plan began, with roughly 350 Macy's stores expected to remain nationwide. Walter, a mall security guard who has worked near a Macy's anchor store for over a decade, said foot traffic near his end of the building noticeably dropped every time a round of closures was announced, dragging down even the food court on the same level. Mall management eventually brought in a fitness studio and a small event space to fill part of the vacant footprint, though Walter said neither has come close to matching the daily foot traffic the department store once brought through the doors. Macy's says its remodeled locations are actually outperforming the rest of the chain, with comparable sales rising in stores that received fresh investment, which suggests the issue is not that shoppers stopped buying clothes entirely. It is that they stopped showing up for a shopping experience that never changed. The company's founder opened the very first store in New York back in 1858, which makes the scale of these closures feel especially significant to shoppers who grew up treating Macy's as a permanent fixture of downtown shopping districts. That gap between an anchor store and its eventual replacement often takes years to close, if it closes at all, which is part of why so many malls nationwide are quietly shrinking their total retail footprint rather than simply swapping one big tenant for another. Walter said he has already started keeping an eye out for his next job, since a mall with fewer anchor stores tends to need less security staff overall as the years go on. Number 5 brings the countdown to a chain most families associate with back-to-school shopping trips. Number 5. Kohl's built decades of loyalty through coupons, rewards points, and a shopping experience that felt like a treasure hunt every visit. The company confirmed plans to close 27 locations, even while noting that its remaining stores were performing reasonably well overall. Gregory, a longtime Kohl's cash user, said he stacked coupons so aggressively that closing his local store felt like losing a hobby, not just a shopping destination. He said losing his closest location has not stopped him from shopping the brand entirely, but it has cut his overall spending there by more than half, simply because the online rewards program feels far less rewarding without a physical store to redeem it in. He added that he had built an entire seasonal shopping calendar around Kohl's cash redemption windows, timing larger purchases specifically around when his rewards would stack the highest. Kohl's leadership has framed these closures as routine lease-driven decisions rather than a sign of deeper trouble, a distinction worth understanding before assuming every closure headline means a company is collapsing entirely. Does a rewards program like that change how loyal you feel to a store, or does the loyalty disappear the moment your nearest location closes? Number 4 rounds out the closures list with a name that has been quietly shrinking its mall presence for years. Number 4, Express spent years as a mall staple for business casual basics, but the brand has been steadily reducing its physical footprint even after emerging from a previous bankruptcy filing. Tamika, a store manager who transferred locations twice in 2 years due to closures, said each round of cuts made remaining staff nervous about job security, even when their specific store stayed open, and scheduling grew unpredictable as corporate trimmed labor hours to match shrinking sales projections. If chains like this are disappearing from your local mall faster than you expected, subscribe now so you catch the next closure list before your favorite store becomes the next headline. Express previously filed for bankruptcy protection and emerged from that process with a smaller store count, betting that a leaner footprint would finally stabilize the brand. Tamika said the remaining stores now carry noticeably less inventory variety than they used to, a kind of quiet downsizing that is easy for casual shoppers to miss, even though it often signals the same financial pressure driving the closures happening around it. 10 chains down, and every single one of them shares the same story. Shrinking margins, aging store formats, and shoppers who found somewhere else to spend. But not every clothing retailer is struggling this year. Now, let's flip the script and look at the 3 chains doing the exact opposite of everyone else on this list, actually opening new stores while their competitors retreat. Number 3, Nordstrom Rack. While plenty of department stores are shrinking, Nordstrom Rack is doing the opposite, with plans for more than a dozen new locations opening across multiple states in 2026. The expansion comes after Nordstrom went private through a multi-billion-dollar buyout between the Nordstrom family and a Mexican retail conglomerate. Off-price retail has become one of the few reliably profitable corners of clothing shopping, since shoppers chasing discounted name brand merchandise keep showing up regardless of broader economic mood. Selena, a shopper who switched almost entirely to off-price stores over the past 2 years, said she still buys designer-labeled pieces, just never at full department store pricing anymore. She said she now tracks restock days at her local Nordstrom Rack, the same way some shoppers track flight deals, and building a relationship with staff has occasionally tipped her off to new shipments before they even hit the sales floor. New locations are reportedly planned across several states, including Florida, California, and Ohio, with exact opening dates rolling out throughout the year as leases finalize. Selena said the treasure hunt feeling of never knowing exactly what will be on the racks keeps her checking back far more often than she ever visited a traditional department store. And that unpredictability, which might sound like a downside on paper, is actually one of the biggest reasons off-price shopping keeps pulling in loyal repeat visitors. Number 2 proves that even in a rough retail year, the right pricing strategy can still pull in crowds. Number 2, Uniqlo. Uniqlo has been quietly building a loyal following in the United States for 2 decades, and it is capitalizing on that loyalty now with new store openings, including flagship locations in major cities. The brand's appeal comes down to a simple formula: basics built with genuinely useful fabric technology, sold at prices that do not require a sale to feel reasonable. Bennett, a shopper who first discovered the brand through a coworker's recommendation, said he now buys the same 3 staple items every season because the quality holds up better than trendier competitors at a similar price. Because the brand controls much of its own supply chain rather than relying on constantly shifting trend cycles, it can keep prices stable even as costs rise elsewhere in the industry. New flagship locations are planned for major cities including Chicago and San Francisco. Bennett said the brand's decision to keep its core lineup largely unchanged season after season is exactly what earned his trust, since he never worries about a favorite piece disappearing without warning, a sharp contrast to the constantly rotating inventory strategy that helped sink several chains earlier on this very list. He mentioned owning the exact same lightweight jacket style in 3 different colors, replacing them only when the fabric finally wears thin after years of regular use, rather than because the style went out of fashion. Number 1 closes out the list with the off-price chain that keeps proving recession-era shopping habits never fully go away. Number 1. Ross Dress for Less. Ross has become something close to a fashion safety net for shoppers tightening their budgets, and the company is leaning into that role hard. The chain announced plans to open around 110 new stores in 2026 between its Ross Dress for Less and DD's Discounts banners, roughly 5% growth in total store count for the year. Yvonne, a shopper who started visiting weekly after switching careers, said she now finds name brand pieces for less than half of what she used to pay at full-price retailers. She said she budgets a fixed weekly amount specifically for browsing there, treating the trip almost like a small reward, and she rarely leaves empty-handed since the constantly shifting inventory almost always turns up something worth the trip. Off-price retailers do not need shoppers to feel confident about spending. They only need shoppers to feel like they are getting a deal, and that feeling sells just as well in a rough year as it does in a good one. The expansion builds on strong new store performance the previous year, with the company strengthening its presence across the Mountain, Midwest, Northeast, and Sunbelt regions all at once. Yvonne said she now plans entire outfits around whatever she happens to find that week, rather than shopping with a specific item in mind, a habit she picked up almost entirely because of how often the inventory rotates. So what does this whole shift actually mean for shoppers walking through the mall right now? The chains struggling share a common thread: full price tags, aging store layouts, and a shopping experience that never adjusted to how differently people spend money now. The chains growing share a common thread, too: genuine discounts, consistent quality, and a supply chain built to move faster than the trend cycle it depends on. Shoppers did not stop buying clothes. They just stopped tolerating stores that gave them no real reason to choose brick and mortar over an app. If your favorite chain is on the shrinking list, that does not necessarily mean it is gone forever, since plenty of retailers use these closures to refocus rather than disappear completely. But if a going out of business sign shows up in your local mall, remember that the real discounts usually show up in the final weeks, not the first ones. The stores that are actually winning right now are not winning by accident. They are winning because they figured out exactly what shoppers were tired of, and then they built their entire business around fixing it. That lesson applies well beyond clothing retail, and it is worth remembering the next time a familiar storefront quietly goes dark. The next closure headline you see will not be random either. It will follow the exact same pattern every chain on this list already showed you. Pay attention to which stores keep drawing you back without a coupon in hand, because that instinct usually tells you more about a retailer's future than any earnings report ever could. Whether your local mall ends up thriving or shrinking over the next few years likely depends less on the economy overall and more on whether individual chains actually listened to what shoppers like you were trying to tell them all along, one closed store and one crowded checkout line at a time. Thanks for watching. Click the next video on your left to know the breakdown of other chains that are closing down in the US. Write in the comment section if this list serves as an eye-opener. Also, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this one.